The Cincinnati Bengals are the Dallas Cowboys of the AFC, which means that they are a top-heavy team that waits way too long to pay their stars, which leads them then to overspending to keep their stars on their team, making the rest of the roster weaker because they don't have the cap space to make improvements. Look at this offseason for the Bengals. They have to pay Jamar Chase $40 million a year, roughly, because they waited instead of getting it done last year that would have cost them less than $40 million a year. They tagged T. Higgins for the second time this offseason, which means if they do get a deal done, that number only going up. This team has dragged their feet now when it comes to really every big contract except for one in Joe Burrow. They at least got that right. But the problem is they're wasting Joe Burrow's contract because they've waited on everybody else. They've took their sweet-ass time, and now they're paying the price. This should be a Cincinnati Bengals team coming off of missing the playoffs because their offensive line sucked and their defense stunk. That should be getting better. That should be making improvements around Burrow to make sure missing the playoffs when their quarterback has an MVP-like season never happens again. But instead, we are looking at a Bengals team that is going to get worse this offseason. That's going to get further away from Super Bowl contention because they are now forced to overpay stars because they waited so long. They are wasting another year of Joe Burrow's prime in 2025 because of how they've botched contracts around him. The news we learned on Thursday is that star defensive end Trey Hendrickson has requested a trade out of Cincinnati. He's going to the last year of his deal. He wanted to stay with the Bengals and get paid last year. They said, nope, we're not doing that. You're going to play out your deal. Trey said, okay, fine, no problem. Let me just go out there and lead the league in sacks. And now, going into the last year of his deal, wants to get paid again. And the Bengals quickly realized, oh boy, we can't afford this guy. He has now become too expensive. So we got to trade him because we can't afford to extend him. They waited, and now they are losing a premier edge rusher because they were too patient, because they didn't realize the talent that they had. They didn't have the foresight, or maybe it's just the cheapness of the organization, where they didn't want to pay him earlier than they had to, is now costing them. Doesn't that sound familiar? Is that not the Dallas Cowboys who waited on Dak Prescott and now forced to make him the highest paid quarterback in the NFL at $60 million a year? Waited on CeeDee Lamb. And I bet you, I guarantee you, they're going to wait on Micah Parsons. It's an obvious contract extension they should give him, but they're already waiting. Max Crosby just got paid. He reset that number. You know, Micah Parsons is going to try to become, at least bare minimum, the highest paid defensive end, if not the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL. Well, that number just went up to $35.5 million a year at least after Max Crosby's new extension. So the longer the Cowboys wait, they keep their stars, but they end up paying more with their patience. And that costs them because they have a tough time then when you have 3, 4, 5 players taking up a majority of the salary cap. You can't build a good team around them, which is why the Cowboys' run game last year stunk, which is why their defense stunk, because they didn't have the ability to pay to make the rest of the team better. And that right now is the future of the Bengals. They're going to be so top-heavy paying Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and it sounds like T. Higgins as well. We'll get to that in a second. That they can't afford to make real improvements to the rest of the roster. I mean, they're going to lose Trey Hendrickson. They have no one else to replace him with. This defensive line stinks overall. Can't stop the run. Can't get after the quarterback. I mean, Hendrickson last year led the NFL with 17.5 sacks. The Bengals as a team had 36 sacks last year. Hendrickson accounted for basically half of them. The next closest guy on the team had 5 last season. So for a team that struggled defensively, struggled getting after the quarterback, you're about to lose now the only guy that could generate any sort of pressure. Not because you think he's going to get old and break down, because you can't afford him. Because you have to pay money to other guys who you waited too long to pay in the first place. That's sad. That's really sad. That is Cowboys-esque. And now the team is going to pay the price. This team's probably not a playoff team next year. And it's really sad that, again, Joe Burrow his prime years are getting wasted. But it's not just the fact that their patience is burning them. It's also the fact that their priorities are out of whack. Listen to this from Ian Rappaport. He was on the NFL Network on Thursday, and he spoke about how the Bengals view some of their key players on their roster.
This is the Bengals saying, love Trey Hendrickson, great player. His value is greater in a trade as opposed to Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, where they've made some level of progress trying to get them new deals. Their value is on the team. Hendrickson's value is not. Put it all together, and that'll be the Bengals who get on the field next season.
What? In what world can you look at how your roster is constructed and say a second wide receiver is more valuable than your best defensive end? Like, if anyone's getting traded this offseason from the Bengals, it should be T. Higgins. You're already breaking the bank with Jamar Chase. You're making a massive investment in Jamar Chase to keep him on your roster, as you should. But again, that investment is bigger than it has to be because you're weighted. But now you're going to double down on the position by also extending T. Higgins? That's where your value is? You think T is more valuable on your roster next to Jamar Chase, and you think Hendrickson is more valuable in a trade? What are you talking? How is that logical? How is that logical? The Bengals don't need help passing the football. That is taken care of. And by the way, the most replaceable position, the easiest to replace, I should say, is receiver. So not only do you have a massive investment already in Jamar Chase, I would say the easiest person to go from one good receiver or one good player to the next is receiver. There are plenty of great receivers all across the league that are found in different ways, through free agency or through the draft. I think it's easy to draft a receiver and have him come in and expect to contribute right away, kind of like we saw with Puka Nacua. Unheralded draft pick that all of a sudden came onto the scene and burst right in. Can the Bengals not do that? Second-round receiver and have him come in and try to play the role of T. Higgins? Hell, T. Higgins was a second-round receiver who burst on the scene right away, had a good rookie year. Why can't you expect the same thing again in the draft? Why would you not take advantage of the value at receiver and the lack of depth at defensive end? That mind-blowing to me. The Bengals have so many needs. So many needs. Receivers not one. Defensive end is, yet they're going to trade their defensive end who led the team and led the NFL in sacks. Again, not only are they the Dallas Cowboys at the AFC, they're also the most mismanaged team in the AFC.